Currently muted.
Apologies. Let's try again. Warm greetings to everyone, and welcome to another day of the UNEA 5.2 Faith for Earth Dialogue Sessions. My name is Reverend Lauren Van Ham, and I serve as Climate Action Coordinator for the United Religions Initiative, or URI. We are happy to have you with us for local challenges, local solutions, faith groups for environmental action. To begin, I want to thank the UN Environment Program and specifically the Faith for Earth Initiative for establishing this important space for 2 weeks of conversation, reflection, and shared strategizing. Faith for Earth Dialogue at UNEA 5.2 is a series of sessions covering 24 themes with 94 Faith for Earth partner organizations. These sessions have been created to demonstrate to key stakeholders, civil society, and the larger UN system participating at UNEA the potential of the faith community. We know we are a mighty force. Faith-based organizations make up 55 accredited organizations to UNEA. When mobilized strategically, our giant community of faith leaders and practitioners has the potential to bring about stronger environmental policies to better address the range and diversity of needs around the world. One of the most wonderful, miraculous things about our home, planet Earth, is how our air is connected to the oceans, which are connected to the trees, which are connected to the animals, and so forth. We are all interconnected. Our sacred texts celebrate this truth and call on us as people of faith and keepers of indigenous knowing to act on behalf of life, the life of humans and the living system of the soil, trees, water, plants, and animals on which our lives depend. We respond with care and love because our teachings remind us that our lives are woven within Earth and that for the time we are here, our sacred work is to be a keeper of Earth. This is our prophetic invitation. So in today's session, we will be sharing ideas from some specific projects currently taking place in multiple regions, and all of them are focused on building the capacity and strengthening the potency of our actions to work across sectors in efforts to restore Earth. Very briefly, if the United Religions Initiative is new to you, we are an interfaith organization with over 1,000 grassroots groups called cooperation circles. Cooperation circles exist in more than 100 countries, uniting people across beliefs and cultures to create communities that embody justice, peace, and care for all beings. For more than a year, URI and Faith for Earth have been working together in 4 countries to customize training for faith leaders and their chosen delegates to become Faith for Earth counselors. Recognizing that the effects of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution affect each region differently, the projects have been designed uniquely in each location. The goal is to establish national coordination hubs where the Faith for Earth counselors and their larger communities are empowered to address local challenges by developing action plans and implementing local solutions. Always, the hubs are considering the UN Sustainable Development Goals and working to actualize these goals where they live. With a similar goal in mind, the Faith Plans program has been organized by Faith Invest and WWF's Belief and Values program. Faith plans are commitments by the major faiths to develop measurable, real-world action plans driving action on key issues, including climate change, biodiversity, and sustainable development. So today, we're going to hear firsthand accounts from the Faith for Earth trainings and faith plans. These projects provide examples and best practices, as well as opportunities for ongoing iteration and improvement as we learn and work together. In addition to building the capacity of faith-based organizations and addressing locally specific needs, these projects are committed to collaborating across sectors, so environmental NGOs, government leadership, and so forth. They're also trying to ensure that the action plans are designed to be continuous and self-sustaining. Perhaps most important of all, these projects are committed to increasing support and engagement for youth, the next generation, because it is on their shoulders that this moment can land so hard. For the next generation and for all species, it is time to move from commitments to action. Let's begin by hearing more details from those directly involved in both projects. The Faith for Earth counselor trainings will begin, followed by team members from the Faith Plans program. There will be plenty of time after that for our knowledgeable presenters to address your questions. So please do put your questions in the chat. And as Myra and Catherine will be sure they are included during the Q&A. It is my pleasure now to introduce Dr. Iyad Abu Mogli, the director of Uneps Faith for Earth initiative.
Thank you very much, Lauren, and good evening, good morning, and good afternoon to all of you. I'm so honored to be with you today. We have our utmost beloved partners with us. United Religions Initiative is one organization that we are proud to be partners with. They have been with us in this journey and other journeys, in fact, for years since the existence of Faith for Earth. This program is, in fact, the highlight of Faith for Earth. As Lauren mentioned, and it is where there is action, where is the actions are felt by the people, is where we can say we have done something. And indeed, the local communities, the national partners are very important partners in anything that we do. As UN, we have what we call normative organizations, and we have what we call organizations that work with people directly, like, UNHCR with refugees, like, WFP, World Food Program, and others. UNEP is a normative organization that works mainly on policies, on programs with member states, putting strategies to curb the environmental degradation and improve the sustainable livelihood at the global level by policies and programs and conventions. However, we at Faith for Earth, we said we do not want to stay in our high towers. We want to get to the people who do the action. And this is where the idea of the national hubs came from. So as Lauren mentioned, we have 4 or 5 countries now. There are many who are interested to join us, where we launched the Faith for Earth national programs. And some of them were really shining stars, were really, they took it and they picked it up, and they connected with millions and millions of people. One of those success stories is the success story in India, and I'm sure Atul will be talking more about that. But with connections with faith leaders in India, you could get to millions of followers. And I'm telling you from immediate experience. Over the past week or so, we've started the Faith for Earth dialogue sessions, where we have 24 sessions cutting across all issues related to the environment. And we have engaged in social media or on social media a campaign, a communication campaign. And it was only through our Indian faith leaders where our outreach got, skyrocketed because of 1 or 2 social media posts. So we need to reach to the people who do impact people, who do have the followers. We're not only counting, the number of reaches that we get. One of the other programs is the Value Education Program, where they reached to 3,200,000 students in their campaign, which was for a few months only. So the power is there. And if we mobilize that power in each of the countries that we work in, then we will be achieving some of our objectives. And the main objective is actually to impact the behavior of the people. And the best part of it is working with young people, the youth, the students, the children, where you can mold and you can introduce concepts that may be known to them, but coming from a spiritual and faith background, that will be engraved in their mentality and their practices. The second thing is that, of course, we're not the only players in the world working on religion, working with local communities. And one of the programs that we, have just partnered with, and we want to have an excellent relationship, is the Faith Plans initiative. And, there's always a role to play. From my perspective, there's never been any competitive, process in all of this. We all are all in this together. And if we put our hands, we can maximize the benefits that we all aspire to have. So working with the faith plans, opening up our channels to them and them opening their channels to us, we can reach even more. And we are opening our hands and hearts to other partners to come on board and join efforts to make that happen. And I'm telling you, since 1972, there were 1,200 environmental conventions and agreements, 1,200 at the policy level. And where are we now? We're still facing problems. We're still facing challenges. Ecosystems are still being destructed. We're exhausting our natural resources. We're contributing to CO2 emissions and climate change. But what would change that is transformational change. And the transformational change comes only from the grassroots and working with communities in changing behavior. We're not saying we have better behavior than they do, but we're saying let's go back to the origins, to our ideas, to our ethics, to our values, morals, spiritual responsibilities, and work from there. Whether you are a Jews, whether you are a Christian, a Hindu, a Buddhist, that does not matter, because all religions bear values, high-level values that we can all live with. So I am so much honored and ecstatic about this relationship, and I hope that this will take us even further steps. Let's work together. Let's maximize this and let's reach out to more countries, more national teams, and do it together. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. All the best. Back to you, Laura.
I believe next we want to hear from Mr. Atul Bagai, who is going to tell us some more about the India Faith for Earth training.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome Dr. Iyad, who is heading up Faith for Earth, Daniel and Lauren, Dr. Lorna, Ellen Otaro, and the guests and participants who are here today. I've been attending a lot of these meetings and I'm often asked to speak after Dr. Iyad. And after Dr. Iyad, it becomes so difficult to say anything because he inspires so much with his talk. And he has so much of knowledge about this whole initiative and what he's done that I feel very inadequate talking about what little we are doing in India. And whatever we are doing in India, I must say at the outset is largely because of the inspiration and guidance of all the partners, but also because of Dr. Iyad's forward-looking and out-of-box thinking on how to really take this program to the levels which he's taken in the last 1 year plus. And as he rightly said, this program is becoming one of the cornerstones of UNEP, and it's becoming one of the flagship programs of UNEP globally. On behalf of UNEP India office, I'll just like to share a few efforts that are going on, and I'm extremely thankful to each and every partner who has been working with us on this issue for the last year or year and a half when we launched the strategy for faith-based organizations for India. And why is this work so important in India? Also is because that India is really at the receiving end of the triple planetary crisis our executive director and secretary general often talk about. Air pollution in India is the second largest public health risk after malnutrition. India is the 12th highest contributor to mismanaged plastic waste and projected to become fifth by 2025. It's not a matter of honor. And India has lost 90% of the area under its 4 biodiversity hotspots, and that's huge. In fact, India's own first ever climate change assessment report published by the government last year found that both the frequency and intensity of droughts had increased significantly between 1915 and 2016. Now, we were just signing the MOU with Maharashtra, and the young dynamic Maharashtra Minister of Environment, Aditya Thackerji, was convening it and chairing that meeting. And in his speech, he said that in his very small life of 35 years, or 30 years, in fact, he's 30 years old. He says that in the last 5 years, he's seen more natural disasters hitting Maharashtra and Mumbai than he can ever remember from the time he was 5 years old. And this is something that is what we all need to be aware of, the kind of change that is happening, despite the fact, as Iyad said, that we've got 1,200 conventions, but yet the environmental damage and the ecological damage that is going on unabated needs to be really looked at. So what are we doing in India? And one of the only ways that can help address challenges faced by our Mother Nature is to bring the stakeholders from all the different walks of life together. And as Lauren said right at the beginning, our sacred texts, and that's so important for India, that our whole culture is so intertwined with our religious faith and religious beliefs. And our religious faith and religious beliefs in India have always given nature the topmost priority. And so all the faith-based organizations who are our partners in India are basically, through the work they are doing of outreach to their devotees, is anyway are also outreaching the environmental aspects of our life, of our nature, and of what in our olden days was so integral to our life. And the Faith Counselors program that was launched last year has become so very important in India that we get many requests from faith-based organizations to enter into MOUs with UNEP or to launch a big program on 3rd March, this program which is going to be organized where our many of our faith leaders will be there. A lot of these faith-based organizations, including those from India, are also going to launch and talk about some of the work they want to take forward as part of the faith-based organization work with Faith for Earth program. In India, I would also specifically like to mention that our team in India has been inspired by our Nairobi team and by all the faith-based organizations. I'll especially like to acknowledge the role that Shubhi and Gayatri have been playing in this work in India. And as the UNIA 5.2 is going on, I think the responsibility that will come to faith-based organizations will be much larger in India, of the resolutions that are going to be approved and agreed to on 2nd March. So I think the 3rd March event is really at the most opportune time when the resolutions that get adopted on 2nd can be taken up of how they can be translated into reality through the efforts of the faith-based organizations. And certainly our event on March 3rd also seeks to highlight that session seeks to provide a call to action to strengthen and harmonize our values and spiritual teachings into action. And that's, I think, the crux of the program Faith for Earth that has been launched. I would again like to thank Dr. Ayag for his enduring support to India office and to all the faith leaders that have expressed support and made efforts to make this world a better place to live in. I particularly want to thank all our partners in India, whether it's the Isha Foundation, Art of Living, the ISKCON temple, or the various faith-based organizations from North India and South India, the Christian Church set up from South India, the Chishti movement, and also the Sikh brothers who have been helping us outreach this message of environmental mitigation to their millions and millions of devotees. And I think this is certainly one of a cornerstone of also our India program. So thanks again to everyone. And I'm really looking forward to listening to the plans of action or the action taken by various faith-based organizations in the next 45 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bagai. At this time, I would like to introduce Catherine Devitt, who will be serving as the panel moderator for the rest of the agenda today. And I think that we will be seeing a video that describes some of the work happening in India as well.
Thank you, Lauren. My name is Catherine, and I am the program manager with the Faith Plant program. As Lauren emphasized, we're about to see a video from India on the Faith for Earth initiative that's taking place there. And then I will introduce you to the remainder of our guest speakers that have joined our panel today. Thank you.
happening in conversations between religion and science right now. I know that many of us would argue that religion and science are not so different, and there are others who feel like they are quite different.
Religion and science, in fact, science is the basis of all understanding of our crisis, either it is climate change or biodiversity loss or pollution. Scientific evidence provides us with the knowledge of how this change is taking place, how this crisis is happening, and what effect it is having on human health and on human life. And that knowledge which science brings to us, that empirical evidence that it brings to us, is very, very important for the faith-based organizations to use it in simpler terms to convey that message to their followers in the religion and in the faith-based organizations.
Therefore, we have come up with a global strategy to address ecosystem restoration by preventing, restoring, and regenerating ecosystems. To supplement this strategy, we came up with a strategy for the engagement of faith leaders and faith organizations in the restoration efforts.
In India, if you go by data in 2011 census, there are around 20 million temples. There are around 3 million mosques. There are around 1 million gurudwaras. And millions of people going to these places every day. If you're going to count gurus, the number of saints in this country, it is more than 10 million. So you understand, if you are connected with a religion and following the scriptures, they can be a motivator for everything.
When faith and science combine together and collaborate, we can have fact, we can have belief, we have direction, and we have action. What more do we need for a transformative world?
First step is to make a conscious effort to tell them that you are in danger. We are disturbing the ecosystem like a machine. We don't think about. So faith leaders can first rope in the thought of disturbing this balance and the ecosystem of Earth. Because slogans can only work when people have a conscious understanding of a problem.
And it is this knowledge that then in turn helps our government leaders make choices at a higher level still, and all of that trickles down.
In our India office, along with Yuri, our partner, we brought together various faith-based organizations, and I'm very happy to say that all the faith-based organizations from all the religions that came on the table were very, very enthusiastic about it and very forthcoming in adopting it. And as a result of that enthusiasm, we have now started this Earth Counselor project today, which we would culminate in the World Environment Day by bringing these counselors together after a capacity building program, and then launch individual activities around environmental mitigation in collaboration with various faith-based organizations. So I think India is going to take a leadership role in this regard.
India is already a great example of coexistence among religions. Launching the Faith for Earth initiative in India as the first country outside the global sphere and at a national scale guarantees creating great success stories to tell. I believe India can be a leading country to demonstrate the real and most appropriate connection between humans and their nature.
And together, as citizens of this earth, we have such an integral job to do in making sure that there can be justice and health and vitality for all beings everywhere.
Thank you, Asmira, and thank you, Lauren and Iyad and Atul, for sharing that very inspiring and motivating video and insight into the partnership between Uneps Faith for Earth and the URI. As I mentioned already, my name is Catherine, and I will be your moderator for the remainder of the panel sharing. and then for the Q&A session with our distinguished guest speakers. May I remind you to please share any questions or any insights that you have, please, in the chat box. We're quite keen to have a very enriching and engaging conversation with our panel. So I do invite you to put your questions in there, which we will then put to the panel after our next speakers, Dr. Lorna Gold and Alan Attaro. It's my pleasure to be the moderator for today. As Lauren has emphasised, as Iyad and as Atul have already emphasised, that there's much hope to be found in all faiths coming together to work to restore and heal our relationship with the earth and with each other. And we hope that the projects and the initiatives that you are hearing about and that you will hear about in the remainder of this session will highlight even further the importance of partnership and collaboration with leadership and grassroots coming together to mobilise the faiths in their response to addressing the climate and biodiversity crisis in this crucial decade for humanity and our earth. To inspire us over the next while, you will hear from Dr. Lorna Gold, who's with Faith Invest in the Faith Plans programme, and we will also hear from Alan Attaro on his insights into youth empowerment and Faith Plan specific programme.
Catherine, sorry to interrupt. We also have one more presenter from the Faith for Earth Counselor Training, Daniel Aurora.
Oh, my apologies, Lauren, and thank you for that intervention. So before we hear from Dr. Gold, we will hear from Daniel Aurora with URI, and Daniel's bio, as everyone else's bio, is in the chat box. Over to you, Daniel, and thank you for that, Lauren.
Thank you so much. First of all, greetings from Bosnia to all other fellow citizens of this earth, I would say. And I'm really happy to be here and to speak about this overarching topic that somehow links all of us from different sides of the world. So I'm here to speak about what we have done here in Bosnia when it comes to Faith for Earth project. But not only about that, I want to speak what we actually want to do and what is our vision for our country, but also for generally speaking, for the whole globe. We are trying to bring closer different stakeholders and to encourage them to speak about this topic. It's really sad, but usually we forget to speak about this topic, and we are having different stakeholders, as I said. We are having a formal sector represented by schools. We are having non-formal sector usually represented by NGOs. And then on the other side, we have faith leaders, religious communities who are and who should be those spiritual links to the earth. And finally, we have governments who have limited resources to invest in different streams. But generally, what we try to do with the project is to bring them together and just to present and raise awareness of importance to speak about same topic, about the issue that can and will create and already creates a lot of problems to our everyday life. So through the project, we managed to map our potential partners, all those who are important stakeholders when it comes to this issue, and encourage them to be visible, to make an action, not only commitment, but the action. So we managed to gather religious leaders, 4 religious leaders of Bosnia and Herzegovina, of religious communities here in Bosnia, to speak about this topic. It's really sad to see that ecology and environmental protection usually becomes second or third most important issue in our country and worldwide. And this is really sad because I'm quite aware that we have many issues and we need to invest our time, our energy, and to work on them. But also this issue cannot be second most important. It can be only equally important as any other. So we managed to gather all those 4 stakeholders that I mentioned through our activities to raise awareness about the need to think about this issue. We usually try to think, and we usually think about certain things, certain problems that are let's say, more obvious, but we forget about those things that are not so close to us, but it's very close to us. And at least I'm speaking from the perspective of my country, we are still not aware of that. We are willing to focus on some other things, but we usually forget about this. So what Faith, thanks to the support of Unep and URI and through the Faith for Earth project here in Bosnia, what we managed to do on a smaller scale is to include kids, young people from the schools and their professors, because they have an access to those kids, to be engaged on this issue, to be aware of the need of their active engagement. We managed also to gather NGOs who are working directly on environmental issues, but also other NGOs, as Youth for Peace is. We are working on peace building, but we are trying very hard not to forget about environmental peace building and about the importance of this issue. And then we managed also to link them with the religious leaders who send their messages about the importance. So since I'm coming from the country where religious are very much listened and heard, this is really significant step toward raising awareness and toward recognizing the need of immediate action that we have to take. Finally, with all our activities, we are trying to advocate in front of governments here in Bosnia, but also on the national level, but also on the global level, that is really important to attract their attention and get support from their side. So generally, this is our project, what we managed to do. But this, what I'm actually speaking about, is much larger vision that we are striving toward, and that we believe that we will manage at least to make a small step towards better environmental for us here in Bosnia, but also all over the globe. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Daniel, for that really insightful contribution. We're now going to introduce Dr. Lorna Gold, who's with Faith Invest, and she leads on the Faith Plans program. And we'll also show a short animation on the Faith Plans program before moving to Alan Otara. Again, I invite you to put your questions into the chat box, which we can then put to the panel after our next two speakers.
Thanks very much, Catherine. I'm delighted to be here today with such a highly esteemed panel to talk about the work of Faith Invest, and in particular our Faith Plans programme. I have a short presentation just to help as I'm talking. So I think many of the things that I'm going to say have already been said. That's the problem when you're speaker number 4 or 5 on a panel. And I would very much echo all the words of Iyad, Lauren, Atul and Daniel. I think some of the things that I'll be talking about now really echo that call for greater collaboration, for mutual sharing, dialogue amongst this mighty force, as I think it was Lauren that called the faith environment movement a mighty force. There's a statistic, if you could just go on to the next slide, a statistic that was doing the rounds at COP26 in Glasgow last year. And I heard it mentioned in some really diverse forums. And that statistic was that 80% of the world's populations adhere to a faith. That's 6 billion people. Faith communities, we know, and it's already been stated, control many assets in the world. Just some of them to mention: 8% of the world's landmass, 63% of schools in Africa. And faith asset owners, faith investors, are the single biggest values-based investor group in the world by a mile. These are incredible statistics. They speak of a mighty force, as was already said, but one that should really trouble us too. As we've also heard, all of the faiths in that beautiful video profess a belief or an understanding that this earth is not ours to destroy. Each of us as people of faith in our different ways and expressed through different concepts and ideas, believes that we have a role to play in protecting and preserving life on Earth for all. And yet, how is it, despite this, despite those thousands of environmental commitments that Iyad spoke of, that the power of this message of all the faiths is somehow not translated into ecological action? The report the UN brought out yesterday on climate change is just devastating, saying that half of the world's population, almost half now, are already experiencing the first-hand effects. We as faith communities have to face the fact that the 6 billion faithful may also be contributing to the problems, and that despite our incredible work of the last few decades, there's still a profound disconnect on many levels. The Faith Plans programme is built on the basic idea that faith communities, big and small, need to be facilitated and empowered to reconnect with the profound faith wisdom on the protection of the earth, and how this translates in a practical way to how they use their assets. This requires a step change in how we think and act as people of faith together. We need to act decisively as stakeholders in the future, as well as advocates for that future. Faith leaders made a significant step forward in translating this, showing leadership on this message last October, when they issued the groundbreaking statement ahead of COP26. Of course, we all know it's not unusual for faith leaders to issue grand statements, but they're rarely noticed. Yet last year, that statement, I think, was worth noticing. Not only did the leaders acknowledge their profound concern for the state of the planet, they also committed to 2 key actions. Firstly, to create bold plans for sustainability, and secondly, to align their investments. These are two major breakthroughs in this faith environmental movement, which we are all part of, that we need to recognise and build on as we support faith communities to act. The Faith Plans programme was also launched on October the 4th last year as a direct response to this high-level commitment. It was launched on the understanding that we all need to work together to generate a broad movement of faiths who are prepared to set out clearly their plans, our plans, to shift our assets and act decisively to address sustainability, starting by putting our own houses in order. The Faith Plans programme is designed to do this as an integral process, which is holistic and solution-focused, placing the existing assets of faith communities at the centre in order to build the resilience of communities. The key to the Faith Plans is putting the wisdom of faiths back at the centre of how we think about and how we manage our assets. This profound disconnect between the roots of faith and how assets are managed is sometimes glossed over, yet it is at that profound level of thinking that the most profound change needs to happen. In the investment world, for example, where a lot of the energy of faith invest is focused, we see that it is only when there is a firm commitment to values-based decisions that the market starts to shift. This involves both screening out environmental damage, such as investments in new oil and gas infrastructure, but it also involves a stated commitment to positive investing for the living planet. We have seen that once the theological or philosophical basis for direction is affirmed at a leadership level, the energy for profound change in communities is often unlocked. And this has been the experience of countless communities that we're now working with. With Faith at the centre, the next stage in the Faith Plans programme is to do an audit of all the resources that the community has. This is about shifting the focus of the faith communities from the big circle of concern to the circles of influence and action. Communities invariably realise that they have many more resources to align to sustainability than they had thought. And through this simple 360-degree audit, they can start to track and plan for sustainability across their communities. The Faith Plans programme also has a campaigning dimension, as in, we want to be part of this broad movement and a catalyst to build momentum for a bigger change. We want to gather as many public commitments from all faith communities to produce and implement plans for the decade of action on the Sustainable Development Goals. We realise we can't do this all at once, but we need to do it on a rolling basis. And our first major call for commitments is live, with 60 major faith groups already signed on. And we are planning to release this first tranche of commitments before COP27. Partnership is key, and many of the groups on this call, including Faith for Earth and URI, are part of the broad network, the broad coalition that we have brought together for the Faith Plans programme, which we recognise as Faith Invest, almost as new players on the block here, building on the tradition and the work that ARC carried out for decades. That we are building on the shoulders of giants, building on the work that is already going on, and have no intention to claim this field for ourselves. We want to be facilitating a broad network, a broad coalition of efforts to bring these plans together into the public eye. We have a number of affiliated eco-programmes that people can join up to in order to also be part of the faith plans. And our aim here is to broaden the scope of our work significantly, aligning and reaching out to new faith groups. And this is one of the things that we found through the faith plans, is that we're able to engage new groups who are not currently in this conversation, new faith communities, in order to multiply the efforts at a local level. Our main way to engage with people and with groups who want to become part of this effort is through our web platform and our newsletter. So I'd encourage you to visit the faithplans.org website, where you can find many links to the other partner websites and the other groups that are involved in the faith plans. And for those who are interested, I'd finally encourage you to sign up and to join the multi-faith effort to really step up and enable faiths in collaboration with everybody who's involved in this vast movement to become stakeholders at this critical moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorna, for that very clear overview and insight into the Faith Plans programme. I'd now like to invite Alan Otaro from the Catholic Youth Network for Environmental Sustainability in Africa. And Alan is going to share about his experiences of developing a faith plan. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation to participate in today's conversation. It's such an honor to be here, joining you from Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, where I'm currently visiting colleagues who are, in fact, doing some of the work that we are talking about here in Tanzania. Just to provide a brief overview about the areas of work that my organization, the Catholic Youth Network for Environmental Sustainability in Africa, is involved in, which then will lead me to the experience with the faith plans to see how it connects to the areas of work that we are working on as a movement of young Catholics on the African continent responding to the ecological crisis. We draw inspiration, of course, from our own faith as young Catholics, and so the encyclical letter Laudato Si is for us really key, is at the heart of our work, is at the heart of our response, and particularly paragraph 13 of Laudato Si, in which Pope Francis reminds us that young people demand change, that they wonder how anyone can claim to be building a better world without thinking of the environmental crisis and the sufferings of the excluded. So also bringing into focus the connection between the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor, and pointing towards young people as showing leadership in responding to this to this one complex crisis with multifaceted dimensions. So one of the things we are really keen on doing in engaging young people in responding to the ecological crisis is what we call formation. And formation for us encompasses creating awareness about the contemporary ecological issues that we face, be it the climate crisis, be it the biodiversity crisis, be it pollution, but also helping young people understand the roots and how their faith invites them, how their faith calls them to respond to the challenges, the ecological crisis that they can see, that they experience in their communities. And to do that, of course, as I mentioned, we turn back to Laudato Si, but more broadly, we turn to Catholic social teaching and its principles, the principles of the preferential option for the poor. Who among us is most impacted by the problems and the challenges that we see? In our big cities, if there's a flood, for example, it's mostly people living on the margins of the city, in our informal settlements, who get most impacted, who are displaced, who are exposed to diseases, and so on and so forth. And so helping young people to tap into these sources of knowledge and wisdom that already exist. The second aspect of our work relates to the networking and advocacy component. As an organization itself, we are a network, so we are building chapters of our organization in different African countries. So far, we have about 10 chapters, all the way from South Africa to Nigeria, covering most of East and the southern parts of Africa. But we're also now venturing into West Africa, in Nigeria and Ghana, and hopefully in the next couple of years, we'll have more presence across much of the continent. The idea is that together we can go further, and that we can go faster rather than working apart, so that the challenges that we see in our countries have their own local complexities. But if you look, most of them, are interconnected. So if you think about where I am now in Tanzania, and if you think of the Serengeti ecosystem, which is linked to the Masai Mara, the Mara ecosystem in Kenya, so that if people are cutting down trees, in the highlands in Kenya, then it has a direct impact on the Mara River going downstream to all the communities along that ecosystem. So there is challenges that we face individually in our communities, but also these challenges are interlinked across geographical space. If you think of the climate crisis and how it impacts everyone, no matter where on the planet you live, then you realize that we have to build networks and we have to work together, sharing experiences, sharing the various challenges, but also sharing how we are coping and how we are bringing our innovative ideas to respond to this ecological crisis. And this is the idea of really being able to connect young people across different countries. And the third aspect relates to the action component, the environmental action component. Once we are aware about what is going on, once you are able to bring together different ideas, different pools of knowledge, of action, then how can we put that to respond to the needs in our communities? And so we encourage young people that we work with to discern, to look within their own local communities and see what are the most pressing ecological challenges that are being faced there. What are the resources available to them to respond to those challenges? Who else can they work with within those communities? And then to come up with a plan and to implement that plan. But to go much further ahead and share the experiences of implementing those action plans with others, so that others are also inspired to take action, to also respond in their own unique ways within their communities, and so that they are also able to really encourage each other and build opportunities for greater collaboration across a much wider geographical but also spiritual space. So our experience so far in working on creating a faith plan with the support and partnership of Faith Invest has been to engage the colleagues, the team leaders of our chapter in the various countries, to invite them to a conversation about what the experience with SINESA, with the partnerships they have already worked on before, has been, to, as Lorna has correctly pointed out, to do an audit of what they have already accomplished, because many times we forget that we've already done so much. And in my experience in working with faith communities is that we often don't highlight, we often don't go to the rooftops, to talk about what we have done. We do it very efficiently, but very quietly, in our communities, in our spaces, and the people that we are connected with. But what is critical also now is to go back and then audit and take stock of what it is we've done and learn from some of the successes, and try and amplify those moving forward, but also to look at the gaps and see who is it that is being left behind in the gaps that exist when we are implementing our programs and projects. And during our consultations, we decided to work with some of the youngest team members within the SINESA network. So we went to visit the SINESA Loyola Club, which is in a high school here in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. And we had several sessions with them, listening to their visions, listening to the inspiration about what they see both here in Dar es Salaam, but what they can see across Tanzania and across the African continent, and what they think we should be calling ourselves to, what kind of ambitions we should be calling ourselves to as young people, as young Catholics in Africa, and what more we can do to realize those ambitions. So for us, it's about creating synergy and harmony between knowledge, between networks, between these spheres of work, and translating that into action. And I think that all of us, even the delegates gathered at UNEA 5.2 currently, if they're able to harness this and create synergy and harmony between knowledge, networks, and action, then we'll really be able to implement the resolutions that are always arrived at during these international meetings and negotiations, but that we in the faith communities have that extra ingredient, which is hope. And if you think about it, that faith communities are able to bring hope to this conversation, and to this movement, which often can be very challenging. If you look at the history of environmental movement, and this week, the United Nations Environment Program will be celebrating 50 years. So it's a good time to kind of look back. You can see that hope is very important, because the challenges can really crush you and give you that sense of that nothing can be accomplished, that nothing can be done. But faith groups helps us to bring that back into the conversation as a critical ingredient, and young people are also able to voice that hope and to show what that hope looks like. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alan. And just to echo a comment that I see in the chat box about how inspiring that contribution was, I think it really summarized the important role that faith groups have in bringing hope to this conversation. And I think certainly given the latest IPCC report that we've seen this week, hope is key to this action and moving forward. Just before we move to our panel Q&A session, we will show a very brief summary animation video of our Faith Club program. And it sums up Lauren's contribution, and it also sums up Alan's contribution as well. Thank you.
We inherited a beautiful world. All the major faiths celebrate the natural world as a gift of the divine. But in a world facing multiple crises, from climate change and environmental collapse to historic inequalities and the coronavirus pandemic, what we do matters. People of faith from all over the world are coming together to take action for people and planet. Motivated by their beliefs and values, they are working to empower their communities and deliver concrete change on climate change, on the environment, on biodiversity, and sustainable development. Faith Plans for People and Planet is a fast-growing initiative bringing together faith communities from all around the world. In fact, it is already the biggest and most ambitious environmental initiative ever developed by the faiths. Already, hundreds of faith groups, from Buddhists, Christians and Hindus to Jews, Muslims, Sikhs and more, have signed up to develop faith plans, commitments to use their assets, investments and influence for the benefit of people and planet. Join us. If we work together, we really can make the difference the world so badly needs. Faiths are major stakeholders in the planet, owning or managing an astonishing array of assets, from buildings and land to health facilities and schools. Faith Plans for People and Planet is a program developed by faiths for faiths. It's organized by Faith Invest and the WWF's Beliefs and Values program, and is already supported by dozens of faith and environmental organizations around the world, including grassroots groups in Kenya, foundations in China, UN agencies, and the world's leading faith networks. So how does it work? First, you go over to faithplans.org and sign up to join forces with hundreds of other faith communities around the world. Then you form a planning team to work on a dedicated plan that is right for your organization, with plenty of support from the Faith Plans team and community. If enough of us come together and the Faith Plans community grows large enough, we really can change the world. But the clock is already ticking. The world is facing a climate emergency. Scientists say it's code red for humanity. Time is running out, and the future depends on what we do in the next few years. When we face our challenges hand in hand, motivated by faith, inspired by hope, we are as strong as we are diverse. That's the power of faith. Join us, sign up, take action.
Thank you, Asmar, for presenting with that video on the Faith Plans program. So we're now going to move to a Q&A session. Thank you to all our panel members for their excellent contributions. We have a number of questions. I'm going to start with a very broad question. I mean, given the week that's in it, whereby we read in the latest IPCC report around the challenges that we face and the stark warnings to humanity. I'd like to get a sense of whether or not the panel, believe that faith organizations are doing enough. Can we be mightier, to use that analogy of being a mighty force? And then in what way are the initiatives that we heard about today helping us to go further, helping us to bring our organizations, our members and networks, and importantly, our leadership along with us? So Lauren and Lorna, I'd like to put that question to you. Are faith organizations doing enough? Could we be mightier? And in what way do the programs that you shared with us today, in what way do they help us become more?
Do you want me to go first? I mean, I think my whole presentation said that we need to do more. So I think that's the short answer from me. I think lots and lots is happening already in many different ways. Lots of nature-based solutions, lots of very different initiatives of the faiths. So I mean, there's a huge amount of happening, but I think we're really only still scratching the surface of what we need to be doing. And I think that's why we in the faith plans, but I guess in one way what we have is a very simple tool to help people plan, to put environmental action at the centre of what they're doing. And it's not a tool we have proprietary control over. It's just one that we know from previous experience really works. And it helps to kind of mobilise communities, especially ones that are not currently engaged in this conversation, to kind of understand and to start to work around their assets. Where I think there is a real opportunity for kind of major kind of action, one of the areas I feel strongly about is around how we use our financial investments as faiths. It has the potential for a systemic level of change, particularly within the broader financial markets. And it's one that has been shown to work in terms of divestment from fossil fuels, having a kind of trickle up and out effect in terms of the markets. I think the faith plans working in partnership with everybody has the potential to do the same in a positive investing sense, because essentially by setting out a plan, these major stakeholders are signalling at a systemic level to the markets. This is where we're going to be putting our money in the next 5 years. This is what we really want to be investing in. And these are the big kind of ticket items that we want to kind of push towards. So that's where I think like the alignment of our investments is a really, really major one that we can all do more on.
And Lauren?
I will just briefly add that I think, you know, are we doing enough? It depends on where we are. There are some parts of the world who have not played a role in causing these problems. And it is my perception that they are taking huge, huge leaps that are courageous, and they are acting boldly. And I think that there are other parts of the world who have played an enormous role in causing great destruction. And I am in one of those countries. We need to be taking much bolder action. And so it's in conversations like these dialogue sessions this week where we are working together. We're sharing ideas. We're reaching as broadly as we can globally, so that it is my prayer, it is my hope that distribution starts to be more attainable. And Lorna, you're absolutely right. In the places where there is financial asset, let's shake that up. And in the places where there are no trees, let's be sure that we're supporting those who are planting the trees. So I just believe firmly in the conversation that we're having today as part of how we can all start doing more, and specifically those of us who haven't done much.
That's really great. I'm going to just move on to the next question because I'm going to pose it to Alan and Daniel, but it flows quite nicely from this. So what I'm hearing is that there is an important regional, local context here to the faith's response to these environmental challenges. And we heard that very, very strongly within our contributions on the panel. We also heard about youth involvement. So can I ask Alan and Daniel, what recommendations or steps would you suggest to faith organizations to ensure that solutions can be tailored to local context and local responsibilities? I think to bring that in here. You know, is it about inclusiveness around decision making? Is there something here about including those that are most impacted? And then how do we do that across geography, touching on what Lauren said as well? If you'd like to speak to that, Daniel, Alan.
Okay, I can go first. Yeah, first of all, I would say that even sometimes religious communities, faith-based organizations are not equipped well to answer the challenges of current world, and also we need to take that into consideration. And what is their role? I would say to preach and to raise awareness, because they're not asked to make decisions. Usually the governments and the real business sector are those who are making those decisions or influencing those decisions the most. But I think it's more important for religious leaders and for everyone who can be heard among people living here is to speak and to take care of the well-being of the people, of normal citizens, not to take care of politics, politicians, and general interest. Because if they, we, us, everyone, if we are thinking more about some political or capitalistic goals, then we are really off the track. So we need to think about person, about community, about whole world, about ecology. And that way we should advocate, we should put the pressure just to put a light on all those issues that exist. But usually people forget about those issues because they have higher goals. So let's try not to think about those higher goals. Let's focus on this. And it's really important to speak, and also for those who are on the positions where they are heard. That's really important for them to speak, because much more people will hear religious leader comparing to me. And so his responsibility or her responsibility is much larger than mine. And that's my point. I would say those who can influence, please do that.
And Alan, on steps towards local solutions to local problems, and that piece around kind of inclusiveness, youth involvement, which you spoke very well about in your contribution. Do you want to add anything?
Yes, thank you. And just to build on what Daniel just said, I think that one of the key elements that, in fact, right now, those in the Catholic Church will be familiar with, we're being invited to, through a process known as synodality, is to listen more, to listen to to listen to each other more. And I was just participating last week in a forum where some faith leaders were saying how difficult they're finding that, well, maybe not difficult, but how challenging they're finding that to be, because faith leaders are used to, to preach, to speak to their congregations, and to be giving messages, about hope, about faith, and so on. But I think this opportunity in which now we are being called as people of faith and as faith leaders to listen more, just pay attention and listen, and take time to encounter what is happening in our communities, and especially the ones who are most impacted by the worst effects of the ecological crisis that we see. I think really that is a starting point, because even as organizations, faith-based organizations, I think there's always the temptation to put as priority what we think and what we consider to be at the top of the list of to do things, rather than taking what is in fact the priorities of the community that we work with, and making those the priorities for addressing the ecological crisis. And I think one of the benefits of doing this that I can see is that by listening to each other, then we also begin to listen to the cry of the earth, because it's nature, really has a voice. People say that nature has no voice, but nature does have a voice. And I think if we do pay attention just to listen, then we will be able to hear that voice, and we'll then be able to respond to what the call of nature, the call of the earth, and then be able to respond effectively to that at various levels, at the local level, at the regional level, and ultimately at the global level.
That's excellent. And I'm hearing a lot about leadership and the importance of leadership and the role that leadership plays. Can I ask Lauren and Lorna, are there any examples from the initiatives that you spoke about how to connect the leadership level with the grassroots level and the level of energy and activity that's happening at the grassroots? What steps need to happen to kind of bring those two levels together? And do you have any examples from your own programs and initiatives that speak to those examples or those processes? Lorna, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, the example from the faith plans that comes immediately to mind is the work that we've been doing with the Focolare movement. Focolare's Catholic-inspired, but a movement that has reached to many different faiths. And I think that they were not really thinking too much about this issue, like at the leadership level and at a kind of global level, until they engaged with the faith plans. And then through a I guess mid-level kind of leader in the Focolare managed to reach out to find out in their network who else was interested in starting to build a greater kind of awareness of environmental issues and sustainability across the whole of the network and the movement. And that has been a really, really interesting process, because I think what it's shown is that whilst leadership from the kind of top is important, like actually change happens when people who are kind of in the middle, there's a kind of sandwich or something, people who are kind of, they don't think of themselves really as leaders, but in a networked kind of world, leadership can kind of emerge from many different modalities. And like almost the accident of the pandemic, which is kind of forced us all into this crazy online space, has facilitated these kind of mid-level leadership networked people to have a much more greater reach and impact. So now what has happened is this, the Focolare has set up from out of this tiny little group and this one person, a task force, which is now globally outlining what their guidelines will be, and then looking to do faith plans in many, many different parts of the world. So I think it's just a nice example of how leadership emerges from often unexpected places, and that in today's connected world, we shouldn't exclude, we shouldn't kind of almost expect that the pyramid of, in the Catholic Church, the hierarchy, or in other faiths, it's much more dispersed, but it can emerge, the energy often emerges from people who have an interest and connect with others.
And just before I put that question to you, Lauren, can I also ask you, Lauren, just to also consider not just the faith leadership, but also the political leadership, and that, you know, what's the role of religious faith-based environmental action in terms of bringing strategy and plans to the agenda of the political side. And I know this is something that Daniel very strongly touched on in terms of awareness and what the political priorities are. So if you want to even kind of expand on that question a little bit and speak to that political leadership piece as well.
I think that, the United Religions Initiative focuses on grassroots action. And so if we were to look at the Faith for Earth training that took place in Bosnia, what we will see is that there were conversations happening at the top with the religious leaders, looking at what was happening for the country, what's important. And then there are the young people dancing circles around environmental action and doing an online campaign where they're on their bikes and they're at the national park and it is a sandwich, isn't it, Lorna? We need both of these things. And I think in India, what we've seen is that we put many stakeholders in the same room and that we start talking, because it's the conversation, it's the community of belonging, it's realizing that we go about it differently, but we do want some of the same things. And that's powerful. It's vulnerable work, but it's very powerful. With respect to the government, I think that part is trickier. And I think that it's an incredible invitation for faith leaders to do the dance of talking about some political issues from the pulpits, as it were, finding some ways to make sure that our moral imperatives, that our religious teachings are visible in the world, even if the political agenda is not aligned. And so that is, it's a tension that we walk, and I think it's very important that we continue to do it. And I think that there have been glimmers of that in the Faith for Earth training. I also think that people are 1 year in and probably starting to feel more emboldened or more clear about how they want to take that very issue, Catherine, even broader.
That's excellent. I'm quite conscious of time, but I do have one final question for Alan and Daniel, and it's a very important question. And that question is, Daniel and Alan, what do you find joyful in terms of your work? And how do you sustain yourselves in terms of keeping hope, keeping joy, especially amidst the challenges and the warnings and so on that we encounter when we experience around the environmental crises?
I would answer quite briefly. Work with other people really inspires me, and usually we in Youth for Peace we work with the young people. So it's not about the topic itself. Is it environmental protection or peace building activities or dealing with the past? But when you see the motivation in their eyes, in their deeds, in their actions, and willingness to try to fight the battle, which is not easy, to try to fight the battle, which is quite hard because the opponents are quite strong. When I see that kind of motivation and willingness, that it gives me inspiration to move forward and open more opportunities for such work, because it would be very bad if we would give up. So I see many, many young people who are not loud enough, but I see many of them who are willing to make changes toward more sustainable, more peaceful societies. So when I see those people, I want to work with them. So that's the only reason why I do this work, and that's the reason why Youth for Peace and or URI do those kind of activities, grassroots activities, which are quite essential.
Thank you, Daniel. And Alan?
Yeah, one of the components that really excites me when I looked at the presentation on the faith plans, and that also we have taken keen interest in, is the element about celebration. Because here in Africa, celebration is a very key part, integral part of our lives. You know, a colleague was surprised, a colleague from Europe was surprised recently when, you know, he saw this documentary about people dancing at a funeral in West Africa, and was wondering what that is about. And I said, well, every event I can think of in Africa, be it one that, you know, will be considered joyful or one that will be considered sorrowful, there'll always be drums or some sort of musical instrument of one kind or another, which is to say that being able to bring people together, you know, to be able to celebrate what they're doing, but also to celebrate their kinship, celebrate either as people of faith or as a community is really important in keeping that fabric, you know, together. And for me, the second element that personally, it's something that I'm also really starting to cultivate in recent days is taking time to appreciate the beauty of nature. I remember once a priest we work with in some youth work sometime before made a comment about how weird he found it that he woke up in the morning and saw the sun rising and said to a colleague, "How beautiful is that?" And the colleague didn't even notice that, you know, the beauty of the sun rising. I think, you know, being able to appreciate that in spite of all the challenges, the problems that we can see, but taking time to appreciate the magnificence of nature, I think is very important in keeping that motivation going to say, I want to be able to keep that beauty, and I want to be able to allow the next generation to enjoy the same or even better. I think that's really important.
Thank you, and thank you. Unfortunately, we've run out of time for our Q&A session. I feel we could have actually spent a lot longer, and I realize that we haven't heard from Iyad, but I'm sure Iyad is enjoying a welcome break because he's been involved in all of the UNA dialogue sessions. So thank you all to our panelists. We've heard so much richness around collaboration, awareness raising, faiths being the mighty force, but perhaps only scraping at the surface. And then the need for synergy and harmony, which I think we've experienced here this afternoon. So thank you all to our speakers and contributors. I am going to hand over now to Lauren. Lauren is going to give us bring us into a wrap-up session and give us her closing remarks. So thank you all, and thank you, Lauren.
I do have just a few sentences to share as a way of sending forth. But Iyad, I see that your camera is on there. Would you like to offer anything just by way of summary and send off for us?
Well, I was just going to ask, define break to me. What does it mean? What is this word? It's strange to me. Well, thank you very much, everybody. I have been really inspired by all your contributions and commitments. And we all saying the same thing. We're saying, let's put our hands together and work together for Earth, for the planet, for the people, to live in harmony, in prosperity, because faith organizations, we're not talking about only preserving a tree or a bird. We're talking about sustainable livelihoods of the people, where we talk about the production system of nature and how we work with that sustainably for our generation and for generations to come. And we're talking about peace and reconciliation and coexistence and work and living together in harmony with one another and with nature. So you beautifully put all of that out, and I'm very much indebted to each and every one of you. It's a commitment from us to continue our collaboration, our partnership. So with all God's blessings, I send you off, and thank you very much. Back to you, Lauren.
Thank you all for being here today, for your willingness to give your time and your creativity and your labor to the great work of creation care. Blessings upon each of you, blessings upon all beings everywhere, human and more than human. May peace prevail on earth.
Amen. Bye-bye.